week's episode of Seraph of the End. You and his vampire-slaying crew fight against Marilyn Manson. There is the possibility that this is the best episode of Seraph of the End. In terms of the pacing, the character design, and the action sequence, this one pretty much had everything going for it. Is it a groundbreaking episode? No, not really, but it's entertaining as all hell. Picking up immediately after last week's episode, after Yu and his team got spanked by Gurren, they've now been velcroed to this other team of really well-designed characters whose names that I can't remember, except for the character of Yayoi. She's basically like the Velma of the group, except that she's got really big eyes. Now, the most obvious route they could go in this scenario is that Yu's team does not get along with Narumi's. Luckily, they squashed that pretty much immediately within the first couple minutes of the episode, and right after that, we get lots of vampire-slaying badassery. We're immediately introduced to this one noble who goes by the name of Lucal Wesker, who seems to be allied with that other chibi-eyed vampire who goes by the name of Lest Carr. I'm not sure why he's actually with him and joining his faction. Maybe they just have a fetish for top hats. That being said, the design of this character is really cool and immediately just reminds me of Marilyn Manson. It just looks just like him with the black lipstick and the fact that he looks like he's gonna be sort of like this ridiculous over-the-top character, kind of like the character of Farid, but honestly, he's a lot more subdued and he's really a lot cooler for that. And he apparently is not that powerful, but he certainly was able to fight on almost even terms against both Yu and Narumi's team, which is undoubtedly the highlight of this episode, getting to see all of them work together and use all of their individual abilities to bring this vampire down. I especially love the fact that we have the character of Yuichiro who's hanging out with Shinya, because technically they are both snipers. One of them fires arrows and one of them fires white electrical tigers. Which one do you think is cooler? The scene, though, is very important because it shows they still have a lot to learn and they're going to be doing it in the midst of battle, so we're not going to have to go through any big, lengthy training sequences. The cool thing about this action sequence is that all of the characters get to do something really awesome and they really get to take advantage of their personalities. Yu, of course, pretty much gets the finishing blow, but just about everybody gets to do something awesome. Kimizuki, in particular, was really awesome in this episode because they actually end up cutting off Wesker's arm, and instead of him grabbing it and reattaching it so that it can just heal it back onto his frickin' bloody stump, Kimizuki decides to actually stab it with his sword, which slowly starts to make it disintegrate, because a vampire can heal his arm if he gets his arm back. He cannot regenerate it. What does he think, he's a Namekian? Part of the episode that I think is most interesting, however, is that when Wesker is defeated, he's not going to allow himself to be defeated by humans. He has too much pride for that, so he decides to steal one of their weapons and simply kills himself. It's a really weird scene, and it says a lot about this character, especially speaking for his extreme vampire pride. That and the fact that he's also pretty frickin' insane. He had a butler vampire at the beginning of this episode who was quickly dispatched when both Yuichiro and Shinya fired at him and he used him as a living vampire shield. So this guy was pretty messed up. But what's really great about this is that it establishes that if all these characters work together, they can destroy these noble vampires. However, I have a feeling like they haven't even, seen who the strongest characters in the series are quite yet, because you have this other scene with Gurren who's fighting against this really weird giant vampire who looks like something out of D. Gray Man. Just a really interesting design with the weird, glasses that he's wearing and these big metal claws. But Gurren actually ends up finishing him off. As soon as they finish off Chubbs McVampire, they decide they're gonna go after Crowley, that one annoying vampire who never stops smiling. I really hope they put this guy in his place and knock him down a peg or two, because frankly, he really gets under my skin and he pisses me off. Why? I can't quite explain it. Maybe it is because he's always smiling, but I'm really hoping that it's either going to be Gurren or Yu who ends up wiping that off his face. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Seraph of the End? This episode was just fun. Simple as that. Just a nice excuse for some really cool action and getting to see all of the characters work together. Like I said, this could have been a whole episode about Yu just constantly arguing with Narumi's team, and thank God they did not go in that direction. They just said, screw it, let's give him a cool action scene with a Marilyn Manson vampire. And you know what? It worked. The action scene had a lot of fluidity behind it, a lot of impact. Not a very complex episode, but not every episode has to be that way. This one was just a very good excuse to see some action and to build some intensity for all of these other battles which are going to be taking place very, very soon. So on the technical side of things, this episode looked very good. There were still a few moments I think they could have made it look a little bit better, but for the most part, I'd go as far as to say that this is the best animated episode of Seraph of the End thus far, just for the fluidity of all of it. And a lot of the camera sweeps looked really good, especially when you started to draw his sword and defeat Lucal Wesker. So this was a pretty fun episode of Seraph of the End. Was it a perfect episode? No! Seraph of the End is not a perfect anime series, but as far as entertainment value goes, this is a pretty awesome episode. An A+, a 5 out of 5 that you should definitely check out. That's right, I really liked this episode. So check it out, Seraph of the End fans. If you're reading the manga or watching the anime, check out this episode. You might see something you like. Before you guys leave today, I would love to hear your thoughts about this week's episode of Seraph of the End. What did you think about the battle against the Marilyn Manson vampire? What other vampire nobles do you think we're going to see? Do you think Gurren and his team are going to be the ones to take down Crowley? Or are they going to be defeated and is you and his team going to have to jump in and save the day? How is Mika going to factor into all of this? What do you want to see from the rest of the Seraph of the End anime? Please tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. If you would like, please give the video a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way you can see all of these awesome anime reviews as they are released. You can also follow us on social media and all that other jazz. So thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!